Remember the old adage that our mothers taught us? It's always our mothers. Isn't that funny? My mom said, stop and count to 10 before responding, especially when you're angry. So count to 10 before you say anything. Thomas Jefferson took it a bit further. He said, when angry, count to 10 before you speak. But if you are really angry, you might better count to 100. Sounds like good advice for us to heed, especially considering the climate of today's world with Twitter and Facebook emails and heated conversations. The honest truth is that we know that people, by their words and actions, will offend us, some intentionally and others not. We know people who hurt each other. We know we have hurt our family and friends by our words and by the things that we do and the things that we don't do. I know I do it. Sometimes I'm aware when I do it, and sometimes I'm not. We offend each other by the language we use. We offend each other because some of us have lack of filters and sophistication in how we carry on our conversations. So what I'm trying to say is, just simply, sometimes people say cruel things. We know because we have all heard hurtful and unkind comments. We are humans, and being human means that at times you're going to disappoint and hurt and offend others. It's part of being a human being. We're not perfect. Sometimes it even means folks will stir up division and dish out some dirt or deceit or break confidence. I must admit, I don't like doing any of that, but if I'm honest, I'm sure I have, and I know of times that I have. Now, before you tune me out, there is good news, and the rest of it is good news to be heard. There is power to be transformative. The offended gets to choose their response. We might not have control over what others say or do against us, but we always get to choose how we are going to respond. The other day, I kind of got my rankles up. I think lots of times when I'm offended, it's because I've gotten my feelings hurt. People have, just don't understand me or have said things, and then I take it a little bit too personally. So instead of lashing out, I kind of had a talk with myself, and I calmed myself down. I got to choose how I would react to being offended. We get to choose to let the offense impact us negatively or to deal with it in a healthy way. Viktor Frankl said this, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space, there is a power to choose our response. Frankl knew about responding well, even in the midst of despair and destruction and death. He knew that no one could take away freedom to choose how he would respond. What an empowering insight for people of faith to hear. We get to choose how we respond. Our lesson for this morning invites us to focus on a response to an offense of an act against us. If another member of the church sins against you, go and point out the fault when two of you are alone. If that member listens to you, you have regained that one. But if you're not listened to, take one or two others along with you so that every word can be confirmed. Let's make sure we get the notion of sin as it applies in this context. So I want you to hear how the Message has interpreted it. It says, if a fellow believer hurts you, go and tell him. Work it out between the two of you. If he listens, you made a friend. If he won't listen, take one or two along so that the presence of witnesses will keep things honest and try again. You see, sin causes disruption. It promotes division. It is a catalyst for despair. Sin hurts the individual as well as the community. The use of the word sin here infers a negative, unhealthy, and a wounding action. What you have done, what you have sinned, has hurt me. It is not to be taken lightly or casually dismissed. The consequences of sins have significant harmful effects. I mention this because we need to remember that we're in the section of Matthew's gospel that's instructive, the part of the gospel that's teaching about the ethos of discipleship, the guiding beliefs or ideals that characterize a Christ-like community, choosing forgiveness is one of the central ideals. You notice in this passage, which is very interesting, it's not the one who has sinned that is being talked to, but rather it's the victim. The victim is the one who is carrying the burden of repairing the relationship, which I find really interesting. And another thing, which is a whole other conversation and perhaps sermon, is it doesn't even matter. They don't even talk about what's happened. It didn't matter what the sin was. The most important thing is the repairing of the relationship if it can happen. One commentary said this: Matthew 18 is a chapter about the danger of sin and the beauty of God's amazing grace. Already Jesus has talked about the lost sheep and a shepherd who would gladly forsake 99 to locate the one that was lost. We then hear about the servant who was forgiven a huge debt and how the debts were given to forgive and pale in comparison. The author goes on to say, this is a God who relentlessly and generously writes the image. God is a God of grace and goodness, constantly offering to us undeserved place at the table. The ethos of discipleship says you get to choose how you respond when someone hurts you, when someone negatively impacts the community of faith. We get to choose to care for each other. The choice to forgive must become at the heart of the Christian community. The emphasis here is not to punish, but to repair. I am not so naive to think that this is an easy thing to do. I can tell you, I don't know if it's harder as you get older, but true confession, I don't like when I mess up, so I don't like to say, will you forgive me? Because if I mess up, then I think that I'm not as good as I should be, or I never should have messed up. We have a hard time saying and asking for forgiveness. Relationships are difficult and messy and complicated. I know that we hurt and wound each other, and I know sometimes it's deep. I'm aware with the elections right around the corner that I think things are going to get worse than they are now, and I think they're pretty bad right now. But forgiveness, restoring relationships, is Christ-like. And that we need to be careful with our words and our actions. You see, the purpose of forgiveness is to maintain or continue a relationship if possible. Like God who chooses through Christ to call us friends, we choose forgiveness in order to remain connected. Understanding the purpose of forgiveness is essential for us because when we understand, we are better equipped to make it part of our daily living, allowing us to become a real power in other people's lives, offering forgiveness and wholeness and holiness. C.S. Lewis writes this: without forgiveness, a world that is broken stays broken. Without forgiveness, relationships with each other and God stay torn, which means we are fragmented. Forgiveness is about more than absolving the guilt of the sinner. It's about a way to live life. It's a way that empowers Christians to embody healing and the recreative power of the Spirit. So, just a couple things about forgiveness, and then I'll wrap up. First of all, I believe forgiveness is a process. It's a journey, and as much as we might like to simply forgive and forget, it doesn't work that way. Hurts have a way of resurfacing if we hurry the journey, if we don't take what we did seriously. I can even argue that a quick forgiveness is not really forgiveness. Forgiving and being reconciled to our enemies or our loved ones are not about pretending that things are and others that they are. It's not about patting one another on the back and turning a blind eye to the wrong. True reconciliation exposes the awfulness, the abuse, the hurt, the truth. It could even sometimes make things worse. It's a risky undertaking, but in the end, it's worthwhile because in the end, only an honest confrontation with reality can bring about real healing. Superficial reconciliation can bring only superficial healing. Those words were penned by Desmond Tutu, and he knew what it was to forgive. If forgiveness is to come and trust is to be rebuilt, it will take time, it will take desire, and it will take effort on the part of those involved. The second thing is there must be acceptance. One must realize that what has been done cannot be undone or easily undone. You know what you said. Once you've said it, you really can't take those words back. And I think that's the reason why you count to 10. I have told many of people when they've written an email, because it's easy to lash out when you're out in front of that person, hold on to that email, and if you still want to send it in a day or so, okay, but do not send it right away. We cannot dismiss the effect the offense has on one's life. Yet, if forgiveness is to be possible, the one who hurts and the one who has been hurt must acknowledge it for what it is. And finally, and this is really important for each of us to hear, to be able to forgive, one must recognize that the other person is a person that you can love again, and perhaps that you want to love again. That's the essential in the journey of forgiveness. Are you willing to recognize the other as the one you want to be in relationship? Do you want to be in relationship with that person? Do you want to repair the hurt? Barbara Brown Taylor asks this question. She says, is the relationship worth the risk? Because forgiveness and trying to patch up things, it's risky business. She then goes on to say, the only reason to take Jesus' advice at all is to win back a relationship that is in danger of being lost. Once you've decided that is what you want, it helps to remember that you are working for the relationship, not against it, that your goal is reconciliation, not retribution, and that being right, and some of us need to hear this because some of us like to be right, is less important than being in relationship. Let me say that again. Being right sometimes is less important than being in relationship. I saw a great poster and it put it this way: I'm not saying I'm perfect. In fact, I know that I am far from it. I'm just saying I'm worth it. That is the message in this text. It invites us to make the one who has wronged us worth it. There is no one formula that leads us to a place of healing. There is the process. And the process might be different every time we do it. Know that there will be scars, because when we wound something, there is a scar that is left, but it will be healed. Choosing to be Christ-like means that we live a life that offers a way back, a way towards restoration and wholeness and holiness, a way that allows for goodness and grace and mercy and peace. In some ways, what a perfect day for this text, because right in front of us is a table, and it is a table that invites us to come and partake in the wealth of God's love that allows us to repair relationships. It allows us to breathe in God's goodness. It allows us to be a part of a community that values life of all people. A table for you and for me and for all God's people.